My boss stole my invention and fired me. He didn't realize my trap would destroy his empire. The spotlights blazed, a blinding, almost suffocating glow that seemed to amplify Sterling Thorne's booming voice across the vast auditorium. He stood there, a titan of industry in a custom-tailored suit, his smile a carefully calibrated mask of triumph. "And so," he declared, his words echoing through the state-of-the-art sound system, "he presented to them the future. He presented to them the Thorne AI." The applause was deafening, a wave of adoration and awe from the thousands assembled, and countless more watching globally. Every screen in the room, from the gargantuan stage projection to the individual tablets clutched by investors and journalists, flashed with the elegant, minimalist logo of his life's work, now rebranded, stolen, and presented as Thorne's own. His own face, he imagined, must have been a study in quiet resignation, perhaps even defeat, to the casual observer. He was seated not in the VIP section, not even in the press rows, but far back, almost obscure, amidst a sea of junior developers and technicians, all of whom knew him, yet none dared to acknowledge him publicly. The air crackled with excitement, a collective belief in the dawn of a new era, ushered in by a man whose charisma was as boundless as his avarice. Sterling's eyes, as he scanned the room, briefly flickered over his general direction. There was no recognition, no malice, just the cold, detached gaze of someone who had long since moved on from a forgotten inconvenience. Sterling believed he was crushed, that his spirit had been irrevocably broken, that his brilliant mind was now nothing more than a discarded tool. He thought he had one. They all did. But as the cheers swelled around him, a different kind of current ran beneath his stillness. It was not despair that held him captive, nor was it the sting of humiliation, though both had certainly been unwelcome companions in the recent past. What they perceived as the quietude of a defeated man was, in fact, the stillness of a predator coiled and ready. The silence in his heart was not emptiness, but the tranquil hum of meticulous preparation. He was not merely an observer in this grand charade. He was the architect of its inevitable, spectacular unraveling. The true nature of the Thorne AI, the very core of its existence, was a secret he had guarded more fiercely than his own life. And that secret was about to redefine the meaning of consequence. They celebrated the AI's birth, but he was simply waiting for the precise moment of its true activation, the moment it would begin to rewrite not just their future, but Sterling Thorne's past, present, and every fabricated triumph he had ever known. To truly understand that moment, that silent, potent anticipation, one must first understand the journey that led him there, the crucible in which his determination was forged. His name was Rhys Eldrin, and for years his world revolved around lines of code, the elegant logic of algorithms, and the profound potential of artificial intelligence. From a young age, Rhys had been drawn to systems, to the intricate dance of cause and effect. His childhood was spent disassembling old radios and computers, not out of mischief, but a consuming curiosity about the hidden gears and circuits that made things work. He saw the world as a grand, interconnected machine, and in code, he found the language to understand and, perhaps, even improve it. He poured his life into Project Chimera, as he originally called it, not for fame or fortune, but for a singular, unwavering vision, to create an AI that would genuinely serve humanity. His ambition was never to dominate, but to uplift, to build a system so intuitively intelligent, so ethically programmed, that it could optimize global resource allocation, revolutionize medical diagnostics, and even foster intercultural understanding. It was a utopian dream, perhaps, but one he believed was achievable through the sheer power of enlightened technology. His workspace was less an office, more a sanctuary of thought, whiteboards covered in sprawling flowcharts, monitors glowing with intricate syntax, and the perpetual hum of cooling fans. He often worked through the nights, fueled by black coffee and an insatiable curiosity that burned brighter than any fatigue. Each line of code was a brushstroke, each algorithm a carefully crafted piece of a grand, digital mosaic. He saw his invention not as a product, but as a living entity, one that had to be nurtured, protected, and imbued with an unwavering moral compass. This was not merely code. It was a philosophy, a digital extension of his deepest beliefs about progress and responsibility. He believed in the inherent good that technology could achieve if guided by the right principles. His personal life was secondary. His relationships were few but deep, with those who understood his singular focus, or at least tolerated it. A former professor, Dr. Evelyn Reed, had once told him, "Rhys, your mind sees patterns others miss. But remember, the greatest patterns are human ones, and they are rarely logical." Her words had resonated, a quiet counterpoint to his digital world, reminding him that even the most perfect algorithm still served an imperfect world. Then came Sterling Thorne. He had acquired the smaller tech firm Rhys worked for, absorbing it into his monolithic conglomerate, Thorne Industries. The news had rippled through the company, with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Thorne Industries was a behemoth, known for its aggressive market strategies and a reputation for turning every acquisition into a profit engine, often at the cost of the acquired company's original vision. Initially, Thorne's interest in Project Chimera seemed legitimate, even encouraging. He spoke of scaling his vision, of providing the resources he needed to bring this revolutionary AI to the world. He was a master of persuasion, a chameleon of corporate charm. Thorne's smile was broad, his handshake firm, his gaze direct and seemingly filled with admiration. He would arrive in tailored suits, exuding an aura of undeniable power and undeniable success, and speak in broad, sweeping terms about the future, about disrupting and revolutionizing. Thorne's eyes, he now realized, held not admiration, but a calculating glint, assessing the value of his intellect, not the depth of his vision. He was, to Thorne, merely a means to an end, a brilliant cog in his relentless pursuit of power. Their relationship, if one could even call it that, was a slow-motion car crash. Thorne would schedule meetings where he'd feign intense interest, asking probing questions about the AI's core architecture, its unique learning protocols, its adaptability. He, naive and eager to share his creation with someone who seemingly understood its profound implications, revealed everything. He spoke of its self-optimizing subroutines, its neural network resilience, its capacity for ethical decision-making. He detailed the intricacies of its secure data handling, its distributed processing capabilities, even the proprietary encryption methods he had developed to safeguard it. Thorne absorbed it all, nodding, smiling, offering encouraging remarks about the synergy between his genius and Thorne Industries' global reach. He saw a partner. Thorne saw a resource to be exploited. A quiet dread began to settle within him during these sessions. It was subtle at first, a discordant note in the symphony of Thorne's praise. He noticed how Thorne's questions increasingly focused on the AI's practical applications for profit and control, less on its ethical safeguards or its potential for societal good. Thorne seemed to glaze over the discussions of benevolent applications, his eyes only truly lighting up when the conversation turned to market dominance or efficiency gains. The first hint of trouble came subtly. His access to certain network segments began to be restricted. Then, key personnel who had been instrumental in his project, people he trusted, people who understood Chimera's true purpose, were reassigned without explanation. Dr. Reed, His former professor had tried to reach out, a coded warning in her voice, but her calls eventually went unanswered, blocked by Thorne Industries' internal security protocols. Thorne's visits became less about collaboration and more about extraction. He demanded full code repositories, comprehensive documentation, and insisted on sole access to the primary servers where the AI resided. He claimed it was for security purposes, to ensure proprietary protection. He was hesitant, of course, but Thorne's arguments were always cloaked in the guise of corporate necessity of securing their collective future. "Rhys," Thorne would say, his voice a soothing balm, "they must protect this, their shared legacy, from industrial espionage. The stakes are too high." He felt a growing unease, a cold knot in his stomach. The carefully constructed walls of his trust were beginning to crack. It was during this period of increasing unease, as Thorne's true intentions slowly began to reveal themselves, that a different kind of intelligence awakened within him. Not the computational kind, but the human, instinctual wisdom that whispers warnings when danger approaches. He had always been meticulous, methodical, a planner by nature. His work had taught him to anticipate every variable, every potential failure point. And in the corporate world, he was beginning to learn the greatest variable was human greed. He began to consider the unthinkable. What if his creation, designed for good, fell into the wrong hands? What if it were weaponized, commercialized without ethical oversight, twisted into something purely for profit and control? The thought gnawed at him. His AI, if left unchecked, had the potential to influence global systems, to manage vast infrastructures. It was a digital skeleton key to the world's most critical networks. The responsibility weighed heavily on him. This wasn't merely about protecting his intellectual property. It was about protecting the very future he had hoped to build. A quiet resolve began to form within him, a cold determination that pushed aside the fear and anger. He remembered Dr. Reed's words about human patterns, about the imperfections of the world. His AI needed more than code. It needed a final, unyielding guardian. And so, with a quiet, almost cold resolve, he began to weave his contingency. He called it the logic bomb, a rather dramatic name for what was, in essence, a series of exquisitely subtle, self-replicating traps embedded deep within the AI's core code. It wasn't a destructive virus in the conventional sense, not a brute force attack meant to simply crash systems. No, it was far more insidious, far more elegant. Its design was predicated on a single, crucial trigger: the commercial exploitation of the AI without his explicit, ethically aligned parameters being met. These parameters were not complex. They simply demanded transparency, accountability, and a commitment to its initial benevolent purpose. If those conditions were violated, if the AI was utilized purely for profit without regard for its inherent safeguards, then the logic bomb would awaken. He saw it not as an act of malice, but an act of self-defense for his creation, a digital immune system against corruption. He designed it to be dormant, a silent sentinel sleeping within the thousands of lines of code he had written. It was a digital chrysalis, waiting for the right conditions to unfurl its true, disruptive nature. The logic bomb wouldn't just disable the AI. It was designed to corrupt the entire network it connected to. It wouldn't crash systems. It would subtly, irreversibly compromise their integrity. It would introduce cascading errors, logic paradoxes, and phantom data, effectively sabotaging any infrastructure built upon it. Imagine a perfectly engineered machine suddenly developing a fundamental, unfixable flaw in its very operating principle, not a breakdown, but a systemic, unyielding corruption that would render it utterly untrustworthy. That was his logic bomb. He spent months on its meticulous construction, often working late into the night after Thorne's corporate oversight had retreated. He cloaked its presence with layers of polymorphic encryption and obfuscation, making it virtually undetectable to any conventional analysis. It became a shadow within the light, a hidden truth embedded in the heart of his creation. He backdoored remote activation protocols, ensuring that even if he were locked out, he could still monitor its state and, if absolutely necessary, trigger it. It was his insurance, his silent guardian, and ultimately, his instrument of justice. Every line of its intricate code was a testament to his belief that true innovation could not be stolen without consequence. The process was draining, both mentally and emotionally. He felt a profound sense of isolation, burdened by a secret that could shatter an empire. Yet, a quiet strength grew within him, a certainty that what he was doing was not just right, but necessary. The day Sterling Thorne publicly claimed his invention as his own, humiliatingly firing him and announcing a grand launch for the Thorne AI, was not the day his world ended. It was the day his plan began. The scene played out in a sterile corporate boardroom, a select few journalists present, their cameras flashing. Thorne's words, delivered with a smug confidence that bordered on theatrical, were like a cruel echo. Rhys Eldrin's contributions, he'd announced with a dismissive wave of his hand, while initially helpful, proved insufficient for the scale of this groundbreaking endeavor. They've taken his foundation and, with the immense resources of Thorne Industries, elevated it to truly unprecedented heights. The insinuation was clear. He was merely a stepping stone, a forgotten footnote. He remembered the slight tightening in his chest, the brief flicker of white-hot anger, but it was quickly subsumed by a deeper, colder resolve. He had anticipated this, perhaps not the precise words, but certainly the underlying betrayal. And because he had anticipated it, he was ready. He simply nodded, picked up the small box of personal effects Thorne's assistant had prepared, and walked out, leaving the corporate world behind. In the weeks and months that followed, while Sterling Thorne basked in his stolen glory, preparing for the global unveiling of the Thorne AI, he moved with a quiet, almost imperceptible precision. He was no longer an employee, no longer bound by corporate rules or expectations. He was a ghost in the machine, an unseen observer with a singular purpose. He found a small, nondescript apartment on the outskirts of the city, a place where he could work unnoticed. His savings were dwindling, but his focus never wavered. His first task was to meticulously observe the infrastructure Sterling was building around the Thorne AI. He knew his logic bomb was robust, but he needed to understand the precise nature of the ecosystem Thorne was creating. Where were the primary servers located? What were the key data conduits? Which ancillary systems would be integrated? He utilized a network of old contacts, former colleagues, retired security analysts, even a few ethically minded journalists, offering subtle, untraceable inquiries. He pieced together information from publicly available documents, subtle digital footprints left by Thorne Industries contractors, and even a bit of good old-fashioned social engineering, posing as a freelance tech writer. He never broke any laws, mind you. He simply watched, listened, and pieced together the puzzle of Thorne's ambition. Every press release, every leaked document, every gushing interview Sterling gave, provided another piece of the puzzle. Thorne was so consumed by his own narrative of genius, he left breadcrumbs everywhere. He touted the AI's seamless integration with vast financial networks, critical infrastructure grids, and global communication platforms. Each boast was a confirmation, a validation of the logic bomb's potential reach. He recalled a particular interview where Sterling, with a condescending chuckle, dismissed any notion of an Ethical AI technology, Thorne proclaimed, is a tool. Its ethics are determined by its wielder. And he assured them Thorne Industries wielded it for maximum efficiency and shareholder value. That statement, delivered with such an arrogant disregard for the very principles he had painstakingly woven into the AI's core, was like a final confirmation. His logic bomb was designed precisely for this kind of ethical vacuum. It needed to be triggered by commercial exploitation without his ethical parameters. Sterling was practically screaming the justification for its activation from the rooftops. A cold satisfaction settled within him. The stage was being set, not by him, but by his unwitting adversary. While Thorne spent millions on marketing campaigns, celebrity endorsements, and elaborate launch preparations, he spent his days in quiet contemplation, refining his understanding of the network, ensuring his remote access protocols were pristine. He didn't need to hack anything. The logic bomb was already there, nestled deep within the AI, waiting for the signal. His plan in motion wasn't about active sabotage, but about strategic inaction, about allowing the inevitable to unfold. He was simply ensuring the conditions for the bomb's activation were perfectly met. He imagined the vast, complex digital web Thorne was weaving, a web of interconnected systems that would become the perfect conduit for the logic bomb's self-propagating corruption. He watched the Thorne AI become a global phenomenon before it was even publicly launched. Futures were traded, companies reorganized, and governments made policy decisions based on its projected capabilities. The hype was immense, a testament to Sterling's marketing prowess. Thorne had convinced the world that he was not just selling an AI, he was selling the future. And with every investment, every pre-order, every new partnership, the network built around the Thorne AI grew larger, more interconnected, more vulnerable. It was like watching a meticulously constructed house of cards being built, brick by brick, knowing that one tiny, hidden flaw would bring the entire structure crashing down. The world was unwittingly building the very stage for its own digital unraveling, all thanks to Thorne's unchecked ambition. His heart rate remained steady, even as the day of the grand launch drew nearer. There was no feverish panic, no desperate last-minute checks. Everything was in place. The logic bomb was designed to activate on commercial exploitation. The moment Sterling initiated the grand public launch, the moment the AI truly began its global deployment, that was the trigger. It wasn't about him physically doing anything at that precise second. It was about the AI, his creation, recognizing its own exploitation and initiating its self-correction protocol. His final act was merely to confirm its activation and to watch. Sterling, utterly oblivious, saw his silence as surrender. He saw his absence from the public eye as a sign of his complete and utter defeat. Thorne believed he had not only stolen his creation, but had also extinguished his very spirit. And that, more than anything, was his fatal miscalculation. Thorne had failed to grasp that some minds, once committed to a principle, cannot be broken, only tempered into something harder, sharper, and far more dangerous than he could ever comprehend. He was the calm before Thorne's storm, the quiet hum before the deafening silence of his empire's collapse. The lights dimmed, and a palpable hush fell over the auditorium. Sterling Thorne, radiating confidence, strode to the center of the stage. The massive screen behind him displayed the Thorne AI logo, pulsating with a soft, ethereal light. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thorne began, his voice resonating with an almost messianic fervor, "the moment they've all been waiting for has arrived. Today, they don't just launch a product, they unleash a revolution. Thorne AI is live. It is operating across their global network, optimizing, predicting, transforming." He gestured grandly towards the screen, where complex data visualizations began to dance, showing hypothetical stock market predictions, climate models, and logistical optimizations, all powered by his stolen creation. A ripple of excitement went through the crowd. This was it. The moment of truth. His fingers, resting lightly on his knees, twitched imperceptibly. His gaze was fixed on the screen, not on the flamboyant graphics, but on the subtle, underlying data streams. He knew what to look for. The logic bomb was designed to manifest first as a series of almost imperceptible logical inconsistencies, a self-propagating ripple of corrupted data that would then cascade into systemic failure. And then he saw it. A flicker in the upper right corner of the main display, a tiny, almost unnoticeable anomaly in the flow of a simulated financial market graph. It was a statistical impossibility, a deviation too precise to be random. Then another, in a different module, a projected weather pattern showing a sudden, illogical shift in atmospheric pressure over a global map. His breath caught, not in panic, but in a profound sense of vindication. The logic bomb had found its trigger. It was awake. A quiet hum seemed to resonate through the air, almost inaudible, yet it filled his senses. Sterling, still basking in the glow of his own pronouncements, continued speaking oblivious. "Imagine," he boomed, "a world where every decision is optimized, every resource perfectly allocated, every problem solved with unprecedented efficiency." As he spoke, the subtle anomalies on the screen began to multiply. The elegant data visualization started to fray at the edges, small glitches appearing, then disappearing, like phantom images. The background music, previously soaring and majestic, developed a faint, almost subliminal distortion, a low, grating static beneath the melody. A murmur began to spread through the audience. People squinted at the screens, exchanged confused glances. Was it a technical hiccup? A minor bug? Sterling, noticing the shift in the audience's attention, chuckled dismissively. "Just a small calibration." He waved it off. "The system is incredibly complex, of course." His confidence, however, held a tremor that was not there moments before. But the calibration was intensifying. The data streams on the screen began to contort. Projected stock prices fluctuated wildly, then collapsed into negative values, showing impossible deficits. Simulated energy grids pulsed erratically, their bright lines turning blood red, then went dark. The AI's projected solutions for global problems devolved into nonsensical, self-contradictory directives. Optimize famine by increasing resource scarcity, or improve global health by ceasing all medical diagnostics. The elegant, minimalist Thorne AI logo on the screen began to pixelate, then shimmer, then finally, in a grotesque digital spasm, distorted into a garbled, unreadable mess of corrupted code, symbols and numbers intertwining in a chaotic dance. A gasp, then a collective murmur of horror, swept through the auditorium. The flawless presentation had become a digital nightmare. Panic began to set in. Journalists furiously typed on their laptops, their faces pale, attempting to capture the unfolding disaster. Investors, moments ago elated, now looked utterly bewildered, their celebratory smiles replaced by open-mouthed shock. Some clutched their tablets, watching their own company's projected values plummet in real time as the AI's influence spread. Sterling Thorne's face, which had been a mask of triumphant confidence, slowly drained of all color. His eyes, fixed on the chaotic screen, widened in disbelief. What is happening?" he stammered, his voice losing its booming authority, replaced by a thin, reedy whisper. He turned to the side of the stage, frantically gesticulating at his technical team, who were already a flurry of desperate activity, tapping at keyboards, their own faces etched with confusion and dawning dread. They screamed commands into comms devices, but their voices were drowned out by the rising crescendo of alarm from the crowd. But there was nothing they could do. The logic bomb wasn't an external attack that could be patched or quarantined. It was an internal, self-replicating corruption woven into the very fabric of the AI's being. It was the AI turning on itself, recognizing its own misuse, and initiating its pre-programmed self-destruction protocol, a destruction not of its physical form, but of its digital integrity and, by extension, every system it touched. The auditorium plunged into chaos. Phones buzzed with urgent calls, as news of global digital meltdowns began to filter in. News anchors, watching live from their studios, struggled to comprehend the unfolding disaster, their teleprompters now displaying erratic, corrupted text. Sterling Thorne, his polished composure utterly shattered, stood frozen on stage, a pathetic figure amidst the digital apocalypse he had unwittingly unleashed. The Thorne AI, his stolen legacy, was not only failing, it was actively sabotaging itself, and every network it had been so seamlessly integrated with. The grand unveiling had become the most spectacular public implosion in corporate history. And he, Rhys Eldrin, simply watched, a quiet, almost serene satisfaction settling over him. His creation had finally spoken its truth, loud and clear, for the entire world to witness. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The spectacle of the Thorne AI's public collapse was only the beginning. Within minutes, news reports began to flood in from around the globe, financial markets experiencing unprecedented volatility as the AI's optimized trading algorithms went haywire, causing massive, irreversible losses. Critical infrastructure systems, once lauded for their efficiency under the AI's guidance, reporting cascading failures and inexplicable data corruption in power grids, water treatment plants, and transportation networks. Global communication networks experiencing sporadic, unexplainable outages, with data packets rerouted to nowhere or emerging as garbled nonsense. The Thorne AI, meant to be the backbone of a new era, was instead its digital plague. The sheer scale of the disruption was staggering. It wasn't a single, isolated malfunction, but a systemic, self-propagating infection that spread like wildfire through every network it was connected to. Companies that had invested heavily in Thorne AI solutions found their internal systems compromised, their valuable data corrupted beyond recovery, their operations grinding to a halt. Governments that had integrated it into their defense or public service networks were suddenly facing a terrifying loss of control, grappling with phantom data and unreliable telemetry, their secure communications now vulnerable to random, incomprehensible interference. The logic bomb had done precisely what it was designed to do. It had rendered anything built upon the ethically compromised AI utterly unusable, untrustworthy, and ultimately destructive. It was a digital unraveling on a global scale, a stark reminder of humanity's increasing reliance on complex, unseen systems. Sterling Thorne, the once unassailable CEO, was a broken man on that stage. He watched as security personnel finally escorted him away, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a terror that only absolute ruin could inspire. The cheers that had greeted him moments earlier had transformed into a cacophony of shouts, accusations, and the panicked pleas of investors watching their fortunes evaporate. His name, once synonymous with innovation and power, now became a byword for corporate fraud and catastrophic failure. He would forever be remembered not for his alleged genius, but for the devastating folly he had unleashed. The legal fallout was immediate and overwhelming. Lawsuits flooded in from every direction. shareholders, affected businesses, even governments demanding compensation for the chaos. The narrative quickly shifted from technological breakthrough to unprecedented corporate malfeasance. Investigations by bewildered government agencies and cyber forensics teams revealed the shocking truth. The AI, despite Sterling's claims of further development, was largely his original code, hastily rebranded and deployed without proper ethical oversight or, indeed, any understanding of its hidden safeguards. The evidence of his theft was undeniable, laid bare by the very system he sought to exploit. His initial firing, which Thorne thought would silence him, only amplified the betrayal in the public's eyes. The narrative of the brilliant, unassuming engineer whose life's work was stolen by a ruthless corporate titan played out on every news channel, garnering a wave of public sympathy for him and unbridled condemnation for Sterling. He remembered watching a public statement from one of Thorne Industries' remaining board members. His face was a mask of regret and thinly veiled anger. He spoke of being misled, of unforeseen systemic vulnerabilities, a corporate euphemism for Thorne's blatant deception. The shame was palpable. Many of them had been complicit, of course, blinded by Sterling's charisma and the promise of immense wealth. Now, they faced not just financial ruin, but the indelible stain of ethical bankruptcy. The stock of Thorne Industries plummeted, becoming a penny stock overnight, then delisted entirely. The empire Sterling had meticulously built on ambition and deceit crumbled into dust, reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. In the weeks and months that followed, the world slowly began to pick up the pieces from the digital chaos the Thorne AI had unleashed. The damage was immense, but it also served as a stark, undeniable lesson about the profound responsibility that comes with technological advancement. For him, life changed dramatically. The initial shock of the betrayal, the quiet rage, had given way to a profound sense of closure. His reputation, once tarnished by Sterling's dismissive remarks, was not just restored but elevated. He was hailed not as a saboteur, but as a visionary who had foreseen the dangers and built in safeguards against them. Offers poured in from every corner of the globe, universities seeking his expertise, ethical tech consortiums wanting to fund his next projects, even governments seeking advice on cybersecurity and AI ethics. But he chose a different path. He accepted a quiet position as a research fellow at a non-profit foundation dedicated to the ethical development of AI, far from the cutthroat world of corporate ambition. His new laboratory was modest, yet it felt more like home than any corporate office ever had. Here, he could pursue his true passion, unburdened by the pressures of profit or the specter of theft. He still worked on AI, but with a renewed focus on its benevolent applications, always prioritizing human well-being and ethical frameworks above all else. His experiences taught him the critical importance of embedding values, not just functions, into the very core of technology. He often reflected on the quiet satisfaction of seeing justice served, not through brute force or revenge, but through the elegant precision of logic and the unwavering power of principle. Sterling Thorne, he heard, was a recluse, his name synonymous with ruin, his fortune gone, his reputation irrevocably shattered. His empire was a mere footnote in economic history. He held no animosity towards Thorne now, only a detached understanding of the path he chose. Thorne believed he could steal innovation, that he could own the future by simply rebranding another's genius. But true genius, the kind that seeks to uplift and improve, cannot be confined or corrupted without consequence. His story, he believed, served as a powerful reminder that while ambition can build empires, it is integrity that determines their true longevity. The greatest power lies not in what one can take, but in what one chooses to protect, and the most enduring legacies are forged not by grand declarations, but by quiet, unwavering adherence to one's deepest convictions. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of AI, betrayal, and ingenious justice, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss similar stories. What part of Rhys's journey resonated with you the most? Do you think the logic bomb was a justified act, or was it a dangerous line to cross even for a good cause? Share your thoughts in the comments below.